Okay, I'm going to start with it not booted just so I can play the intro. Hold on. And it may delay in the capture because OBS sometimes does that. Like the game will boot and then it won't show it. It's not showing it yet. There's some copyright stuff. There we go. If you're ever wondering what this stuff was saying, this is what this stuff was saying. Okay, and I have the background music off for copyright reasons. But when I was playing this earlier by myself, when I was not recording it, I was playing it with the background music on. I tend to do that unless I'm recording it. And then I went in and turned it off preemptively just to do the recording. As you can see, this title here looks exactly the same as it does on the Xbox, and the same image of the map of Lemu is on the Xbox. You can see that whatever floor they go. We don't need to listen to this again, do we? What in the world? It doesn't let me input on this. Okay, well, I'll mute the intro music in post on the second time because I'm talking over it when I edit this audio. As you can see, it's the same song, but it is a different video, basically. As for the spoilers in the video, because these visual novels are not very good at leaving stuff out that gives you significant hints to the plot once you start playing the game. Oh, that's how what they showed in the intro could fit in. This one doesn't show Sara pointing a gun at Tsugumi, but it does show one of the CGs of Coco that, at least in the original game, I believe is the second to last CG. There isn't very much information in the CG, but it's odd that you show a CG that appears that late in the game. Anyway, as you also could probably tell, the user interface does look exactly the same as it does on the Xbox. They did not change the user interface in any way. Oh, that's kind of a spoiler there. Kind of, that's a big one. That's showing that CG. And of course, the Xbox version of this video did not actually show that. Come on, finish. Yeah, they showed that Coco CG, which is very late. I believe it's the second to last CG. Unless they change the order in this. Okay, I'm actually going to punch in so we can get, so it won't automatically play the intro cutscene. You may have noticed that that when I booted the game, there was no toggle from which to select Japanese or English, or the third option is traditional Chinese. Once you've selected it, it saves the language that you've selected in the system data, and every subsequent boot of the game, it will just boot into that language, and you cannot change it like midway through your gameplay. The only way to do so would be to delete and reinstall the game, or manually go into the place on your computer where the game is stored. This is the Steam version, so I have to go into my Steam library and figure out which files contain the system data and delete them. If we go to the config menu, you'll notice that, oh, awesome. You'll notice that I was wrong. Well, I eat some serious crow there. Don't trust anything I say. Anyway, you can change the language in the config. Sweet. And you would expect, cool, okay, well, now they have the language in Japanese. That's pronounced Nihongo. This is actually Japanese right here. This is Chinese, just in case you don't know the difference. So you can see, given the Japanese now, that it looks the same as it did on the Xbox. They didn't change the way that user interfaces looked in any significant way, which it's good in that that's authentic, but of course the fan base doesn't really necessarily care for the Xbox script anyway. The HML patch suggests they do actually care for the aesthetic of the Xbox remake, I guess. So maybe you like that, I don't know. Notice that there's a change in there's a transparency in the text box option here. You can like make it dimmer or brighter. I didn't notice that on the Xbox. It might be there, it might not be there. It depends on if I noticed it or not. I don't know if that would have helped me do that OCR business. I would think actually brightest would be best, because you would it would wash out the details in the background. But it also makes it so there's less contrast between the text and what you're looking at. So maybe it would have been beneficial to decrease the brightness of the text box. But I don't know if it really, I don't recall if you even had that option. You can also change the resolution of the game. As you can see, I have it on the max possible, which is 1080p. Of course, I'm displaying it on a 4K monitor because that's just the monitor I have, and I have my OBS open on my 1080p monitor, which would cause the monitor to upscale the resolution however the monitor decides to do it. I don't know what kernel the monitor uses to do its upscaling. OBS probably doesn't really care about what the monitor's doing, so it probably just takes it as is, I would assume. I don't recall what the maximum resolution of an Xbox is, but I've already guessed it's 720p. This is Xbox 360. Of course, you can put 4K out of an Xbox X, but Series X. But this is an Xbox 360, which this game was originally made for. But if it was less than that, then that means they increased the resolution. Sweet. I'm going to switch it back to English. Being that this would then be in English, I don't have to. The setup for recording this is criminally simple. I just open the game and then I open OBS and then I just start recording. That's just not really my style. But it is what it is. Okay, what's on the next page? Cool. I'm tempted to do this. I'll just do it right now. Because sometimes slower message display is kind of annoying. But I'll put it on fast instead of instant for now. This confirms that the skip mode options were red or all. I had them on just red when I was playing on the Xbox. However, it didn't seem to work quite right. And I haven't gone back to investigate that in any thorough way. Hopefully it works correctly on this version of the game. Backspace. As you can see, I cannot access the stuff like the CG's list or the clear list or anything like that until I've completed one ending of the game. And as such, I cannot confirm at this time whether or not the number of CGs is the same, the number of endings is the same, and those menus are laid out the same. I would guess they would be because everything else about this is laid out the same. But can't confirm at the moment. If we look at the load menu, of course, also has the same format and aesthetic. You can see the very embarrassing timestamps at which I have made these saves. So, diving into the plan and what I'm doing here. So, off recording, as you can see, I played up until the scene where you have a specific conversation with Sora about string theory. The reason why I'm going to read this scene on recording in this version before moving on is because that's a scene that, regardless of how I tried to translate it using DeepL or the Sugoi offline translator or Google Translate, I had a difficult time deciphering what Sora was trying to say. So we'll see how this translation renders that particular scene before I move on. After I know with that scene, I will then play on my own time up until I get to the Sora ending. Then I'm going to play the Sora ending on this version on recording. That one I basically did not record while after I'd taken my Japanese course and after I had more experience using the OCR and after using better translators than DeepL because DeepL sucks. And so the only version I have of me reading that is me using poor technique. That being said, unlike the string theory scene, I didn't necessarily miss the meaning of what happened in the Sora ending. I pretty much got it very well. But I'd still like to reread it just because I don't have a good version of translating it. After that, I will do the same thing that I did on the Xbox version. This is the Steam version, by the way, in case you didn't pick up on that. Well, I have like a baby bobcat outside. Anyway, which will be going back to the Takeshi side and then attempting to trigger the Tsugumi route. It did not happen when I did it on the Xbox. I don't know if it'll happen here, but I presume it also will not happen here. And it will lead me into the Tsugumi Sora combined bad ending. I will then read that ending. I'll just do this entire thing just off recording on my own time. Then on my own time, I will do the U route. And then, once I'm done with that, having three endings now cleared, the Sora ending, the Takeshi bad ending, as I'll call it. I think they call it the U, the Takeshi U ending, which is an appropriate name for it. That's what I called it myself sometimes when I played the original game. And then the Kid U ending, I will get back to the Steam version in English a third time and start trying to get into the Sara route, and we'll see if it lets me do that or not. And then if it won't, it will probably push me into the Kid U bad ending, which will then clear that one. If it doesn't, then I'll just get the Sara good ending, and then I'll just continue on and then try to go for Tsugumi after that. This apparently has 6 endings. It has good endings, that is. That would be Sora, Tsugumi, Yu, Sara, Coco, and then some new ending that was not in the original game, which I don't actually know about, because the Wikipedia page of the original game, which I did read, does say there's another route, and the ending count in the Xbox version does also suggest that there is another route, but oddly for Wikipedia, which just spoils everything, because that's what Wikipedia is all about, does not actually say anything about the new route. So I don't actually know anything about it. I don't even have a guess, like, what would the world would that be? You could argue that Sora's ending is not a good ending, but they added stuff to Sora's ending in the remake that is out of place to it to try to make it less bad, but is still out of place for the Sora ending. So the Xbox remake of Ever17 did not have a fan translation, so there is no fan translation to compare this new commercial translation to English to, unlike Never7, where it did have one. I don't have very much data on the fan perception of the commercial translation compared to the fan translation of Never7, besides one commenter who commented on my, I think it's like part 1 or 2 of my Let's Play of Never7, saying that they gave up on the commercial translation of Never7 due to the quality. Well, that's a really weird thing from my perspective. If I gave up on something based on the quality of a translation, well, that's like, I have endured and put up with that one translation of Danganronpa Another Despair Academy, the first game, made by some YouTuber. I forgot the name of them. I've read things, but via some very, very poor translations, because my desire to read the story just is enough that I'm willing to put up with them. I'm willing to put up with feeding the whole game through Deep L. So I don't really understand that mindset, but some people have it. So maybe that person. So I have one data point. I have one anecdote that doesn't like it. I read the first few lines of it, and it was fine. I mean, everything seemed to mean the same thing as the fan translation rendered it. This one, what you have to compare it to would be the Hirameki translation of the original game, and there are some lines that are in common between this and the original game, particularly in the U route. The Takeshi side of this game is completely rewritten, and there isn't very many lines in common, if any at all. It's actually it's like completely changed. The U side, the kid side, I don't know about the Sara route scenes, but the U route scenes on the kid side do have very strong resemblance, at least, if not sometimes being word to word identical, to the original game. They did less rewriting on that side. And so you could compare on the U route, to some degree, the Hirameki translation to this new commercial translation, both of which are commercial translations, none of these are fan translations. The Hirameki translation does have something called the Himmel patch, but the Himmel patch I don't think changes the wording that the Hirameki translation uses very much. It just changes, it fixes just grammar mistakes and typos that are clearly mistakes and typos and not just interpretation, and fixes a date to make it wrong again, essentially. And then changes tuna sandwiches, fish sandwiches, chicken sandwiches back to tuna sandwiches, and allows you to toggle, changes the measurements back to metric, and then there's a toggle to render U's name as YU instead of YOU. If you're not familiar with this yet, because you haven't started playing it, I'll tell you right now, this translation renders the U's name as YOU. So instead of just transliterating the Japanese name, they actually took it as it was written on her name tag in her sprites. I'll punch into this because I'm going to get there in a minute.
Kuranari-san.
We'll get to that later. That's a talking point right there. So they render it YOU. Unlike the Hirameki translation, which renders the word nakama as friend, this translation renders it as companion. I had a commenter comment on one of my videos of my Let's Play, the original, saying that how they would translate it is comrade. But but comrade and companion are similar in meaning than comrade to friend or companion to friend. So perhaps that commenter would be have a more approval of how at least this commercial translation translates that specific word over how the Hirameki translation does it. Given it's very, very hard to do worse than the Hirameki translation, honestly. So it's no surprise that this thing does better than the Hirameki translation. There's a lot of weird interjections and things and mimetic words in this game. One of them would be Takeshi saying "pochito na," and I think Coco does it once as well, when pressing the buttons that open the hatches. This translation renders that as boink, which I don't know how you would render that exactly, but okay. So what to do with the names? A really weird one I noticed is that we'll get to this when we get some text from the kid. So the name for the kid, the name that is being translated kid by the Hirameki translation was Shonin, which I thought I understood to mean young man. So you could think that it could also be translated young man or translated boy and not merely the genderless kid. I think there's a equivalent name for a young woman that's shoujo. This, of course, the Hirameki translation translates it kid. This translation is weird, where in the name box in the upper left corner, the name given is boy. But in the actual dialogue, how the characters refer to him is kid. Interesting. So it's kind of conflicted. With the names, as you can see, so Japanese people tend to refer to people by their last name unless they are really good friends, and then they can finally refer to them using their first name. Kind of like if you were familiar with Spanish, using the pronoun tú. Referring to someone with their first name in Japanese is like referring to someone with tú in Spanish. But us Americans don't do that, right? We will just introduce ourselves by our first name. We won't even tell people, if it's an adult talking to another adult, what our last names are. We introduce ourselves unless you asked, right? You just go hi, hello, I'm John. My name's not actually John, but, right? We wouldn't say, I'm John, probably someone's name's Cobbler. John Slaughter. Slaughter is a last name you could have. It means someone of your ancestors was a slaughterer. That is, they butchered cattle. So you wouldn't say my name's John Slaughter. You would just say my name's John. Whereas the Japanese would actually introduce themselves with both their names, and then you would refer to them with their last name. So Sora, being formal, she's customer service. That's her habit, is going to refer to Takeshi Kuranari, or as the Japanese would say, Kuranari Takeshi, as Kuranari-san. This translation takes Sora's words, where he's just, which also Yu does this too. Yu refers to him as Kuranari-san, or just Kuranari without the san, because it's Yu. And as so I refer to them by their first name, because that's what the customer service person would do in English. But then they don't drop the son. They attach a son to the first name. Which, what kind of thing is that? Do Japanese actually do that? I know there's Americans that do that. They do it in the South. If you've ever been to Alabama, people tend to refer to people by, like, Mr. John. If you haven't been to the South, you probably haven't heard something like that. But they do that. But I noticed it happens a lot in the South, at least in Alabama. Because I lived there for a couple of years once. They'd like to refer to you by, like, Mr. and then your first name. You think of it as like a dialect thing. That's what this is. I don't know if there's any Japanese people that actually do that, though. That's kind of weird. This first name son thing. And it's kind of... And it has this weird halfway sort of nature to it, where we're going to try to localize it by changing Sora's reference from the last name to the first name, but we're not going to localize the honorific, because that would make Sora sound Southern. So, we're just going to leave it there. But if you wanted to completely localize, you just drop it. You just say Takeshi. And if you wanted to make it sound like a formal appeal to Takeshi, we would say Mr. Kuranari. Or like Takeshi, sir. I don't know. Weirdness. As far as typos, let me go into the backlog here, which is the insert key. Every Let's Play I do, well, maybe it's not insert. It should be insert. There we go. Oh, because I loaded a save file, it doesn't let me go into the backlog. Of course. I love it. Okay, let's go to OBS here. I think I've only recall encountering two typos. The first one I don't have here because I didn't record a screenshot. I just made a sentence that was, I think, in Takeshi's thought bubble, kind of awkward. If you've played this game up to this point, you've probably noticed it. I don't even know it's not necessarily grammatically incorrect, but it seems it's so awkward it probably is. Let's see if I have a image capture laying around here. No, I don't. Okay, this is going to take... I'm trying to talk while I do this so it doesn't stall that much. The second one, I found a second typo, and that's the one. It's happened very soon before the scene. I'm going to try to see if I can bring it up. So I want to go into... called Stagulator Game Recordings. Ever17 Xbox, RAW recordings, and this is the image. Okay. Well, I canceled it. Shucks. Okay. So, this is a screenshot I made using Steam of the backlog. Let's see here. It's a period if only the memory of that accident could vanish like this. Oh yeah, so we're talking about Coco. Coco is nowhere to be seen. Takeshi, I don't see Coco. Where did she go? She went to visit Tsugumi. Huh? But Tsugumi won't wake up until tomorrow, right? Even so, he wants to be nearby. I would presume that the antecedent of he is Coco, and Coco is a she, not a he. So this is the second typo that I've seen so far. Unfortunately, I didn't screenshot the first one, so we're just going to have to let it slide, right? But, so there's been non-zero typos. Yeah. But not nearly as many as, say, the Hirameki translation had. And this is like not like egregious, like you're still going to understand what's going on, even if you see this he as opposed to a she. Cool. I had to put an awkward recording break here. So sorry for that, but things are just going to blip. Okay, I'm back. So I was talking about typos, right? OBS went on the fritz for a bit. Hopefully that's okay. I thought I got done doing that. So more about the translation. Just generally, this is very difficult to describe as it's a vague thing. And it's very easy to disagree with, and I have no way to defend myself against your disagreement. It seems rather dry. And what that would mean is it's kind of uses rather few words to make its point. It doesn't add any flowery language to translation. And I would probably actually consider that a good thing. Because it's a way to kind of stick rigorously to what the original author wrote in, or authors in this case, which I was, in this case I don't know who they are. Stick to what they wrote in Japanese if you do a very dry translation. But and this also, to provide an example of this, I would use the Never17 translation, where they, instead of translating glass, instead of translating a doll of composition of glass as doll made of glass, they translate it to glass doll, right? Doll made of glass, kind of strung out like that, is more words. It is kind of poetic sounding slightly, not a lot, but slightly. Whereas glass doll is just more like thud. It's more like, here's the words. It doesn't mince anything, right? So the translation is very dry. It's very thud. It doesn't mince any words. It just kind of, there you go. That's just generally how it feels. It doesn't feel bad to me. Some people, maybe it does. To me, that's fine. I'm not really complaining too much. This is actually pretty good, generally. Okay. Next, these are the fish descriptions, which I couldn't read in Japanese because I couldn't get the OCR to capture black on white or like dark on light text. I could only get to capture light on dark text. There probably was a way to make it capture dark on light text. I just couldn't figure it out. And you can't read all of this because Sora Sprite's in the way. This is how it is in the game. I couldn't figure out a way to get Sora Sprite out of the game. So that's just like a I don't know, flawed in the way the game was designed. Whoever made the sprite placing team didn't communicate with the team that wrote this description, and they might not overlap, and sprite might be over top of this in Japanese, and they just kind of copied over the sprite positions for the Japanese version, which makes sense. And that's what happened. But I presume the last bit is fishing bait. So anyway, that's the first fish that Sora brings up the Sora database page for, if you feel like reading that. And then I don't. And then I'll go on to the next fish. And this is what the other sausage was made of. I don't know if these are real. I did not Google them, and I still won't. So they might be real. They might not be. I don't know. These descriptions might be accurate. They might not be. I don't know. But there they are. And that topic being brought up, you'll notice that this, although the visuals, the user interface, and like the gameplay is mostly a preservation of the visuals of the Xbox version. Same text box style, same background, same load, save menu, front menu, graphics, whatever. The one thing that is not preserved is the 3D sprites. At the time, for some reason, the developer of this thought that 3D sprites were the future and went for 3D sprites. But, as you could tell, even though 3D sprites seem to be popular with developers around 2012-ish. The Xbox version of this came out 2011, but I think 2012 was about the time Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward came out. That's probably the most famous visual novel for having 3D sprites in it. And not in a good way. It's kind of infamous for having 3D sprites in it. And of course, he was wrong. Well, I don't know if he was wrong. It's not like we don't use 3D anymore. If you've played AI the Somnium Files, you'll find that we do use 3D and use it very well. It's that something they for some reason didn't understand yet in the 2011-2012 era was that if you don't put lines, they sometimes don't figure out a way to superimpose like fake line art on the 3D model, it'll look like it's made of clay. Somehow, we can 3D is acceptable. Seeing people in 3D is acceptable to us in real life. Somehow that depends on our ability to perceive the texture of their skin, which I guess as long as they're close enough that we can make out the texture. If you have someone with perfectly smooth skin, it can start to look wrong. And it puts the characters in this kind of uncanny valley, and it's not very aesthetically pleasing. If you make them 2D, you can put them on the opposite side of the uncanny valley from a real person, and then that works. To put them on the forward side, I don't know. Game developers have been trying to do that for a long time. If you ever played something like Control, and you can see the texture on Dr. Darling's skin and stuff. But to me, it still is kind of in the valley. It's still kind of weird and not aesthetically pleasing. So it's kind of hard to get to the other end. But if you make them 2D, you can get to the far end, and that's also fine. Sora's sprite, as you can see here, is her old 2D sprite. So they had to put the pose. They had kind of. I don't know if the poses were exactly like one-to-one analogous. Like, I think Tsugumi's 3D like side-eye stuff was like pointed the opposite direction or whatever. But a lot of the 3D poses were just like an adaptation of the 2D sprites. So to put the 2D sprites back in, they just kind of resubstituted them. And they had to replace them on the screen in the scenes. And there's some weird stuff that I see, like oftentimes Tsugumi, Sora, and Coco, all three will be on the screen, and they'll all be the same height. Which I don't know if they've had that problem in the 3D version, but it's kind of a problem in 2D because, well, Coco is shorter. Tsugumi and Sora you expect to be about the same height, but you expect Coco to be shorter, and she's not, and it's weird. I also expect you to be shorter, and she's not. It's weird. So you see some of that. The rate at which certain sprites are used seems somewhat different than the original game. The one that sticks out to me the most is the Tsugumi Bashful sprite. It wasn't like super uncommon in the original game. It wasn't like used once, but it seemed like that was more rare than you see in the remake. The remake, you see it usually seems like a little bit more often. They seem to like to use it, which is kind of off because I think like that's supposed to be like there's kind of a shock value to the Tsugumi Bashful sprite, like when it first shows up when Tsugumi is trying to get Takeshi to go with her to fix the generator. It's kind of like whoa. There's a little bit of a whoa to it. And when it's used as much as it seems to be being used in this remake, there isn't so much of a whoa to that sprite suddenly coming out. Of course, the background music, this is the first time I'm playing the remake with the background music. I presume it's the same background music choices as the Xbox version. I just haven't been Let's Playing it, so I haven't been done with the background music on. The selection of background music is fine, I guess. I mean, the original kind of over-selected the Drite stock theme anyway. But it does take a while for it to kind of come in when it switches songs. So if you're at a place where the background music switches, you'll have a few moments where it kind of awkwardly goes silent, as if it's trying to build dramatic tension for the silence. And then it's like, no, not really. So there's a lot of like awkward silence. I guess that's kind of the way the tracks are made. I don't remember that being the case in the original game. But maybe my memory's a little bit off. So I could just jump from one track to the other. I don't know, it's like I said they're okay. It's like the choices seem a little off, but like, I don't know if I would do it differently. That is different than the original game's style of choices. But the original game didn't have them like walking through the hallways as much as a group. But the original game just used the whole like dun 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 just so much. That was just like the main theme essentially. Okay. Enough with the images. So one little thing here. You notice how that spinny circle thing with the two white dots embedded is in the lower right corner? I haven't tried playing through this in Japanese, so I don't know if in the Japanese that spinny circle thing is at the end of the text as opposed to the lower right corner. But if it is in the lower right corner, that would make in the Xbox version, that would make OCR just a little bit easier because it wouldn't have that being recognized as a character. Okay, let's actually read this scene finally. Oh, they did draw a Tsugumi back sprite. So I was speculating about how they would do that. If you record like in a comment or something, a comment on one of my previous videos. What happens when Tsugumi turns her back? They don't have a sprite in the original game for that. The answer is they drew a new sprite. Only one new sprite, but they did draw one new sprite for Tsugumi's back. So yes, that's how they took care of it, is they made a back sprite. Okay, I'll finally read the scene. Takeshi-san. Again, she actually says Kurinari-san in Japanese, but Takeshi-san is what the text says. I hear a voice from behind me. Hey, Sora. Sora's standing right behind me. It would be so convenient if the protagonist was voice acted that I could know something about what the Japanese was, even though I'm reading the English, but he's not. So when I go, hey, Sora, I don't know what that means. That's something like that kind of informal thing. That's something I'd like to hear in Japanese. Sora is standing right behind me, even though the sprite is in front of me.
小町さんは当分目を覚まさないと思いますよ。
How would he see her if she's behind him? Well, because I presume that like the way that's it. That's a problem. That's like plot hole. That is a glitch because how we humans could differentiate between sounds coming from in front and behind has something to do with the shape of our earlobes. We could do like angles by how loud it is in each ear relatively. So if something is close enough and it's coming from a certain side, it will be louder in one ear than the other, and that narrows it down to two possible angles it could be coming from. But then that only narrows it down to like the front hemisphere and the back hemisphere. That narrows it down to within the front hemisphere, like in front of us and one place behind. It could still be in either that one place in front or one place behind. Because there's two locations where you have the same set of two distances from the source to each ear. And it has to be rather close to do that as well. If it's really far away, it's going to be around about the same in each ear. So there's something about the shape of the skull and the shape of the ears we use to determine to decide between those two places that the relative intensities narrows it down to. if you're being talked to using earbuds that are inside your ears, you'd have a hard time with that. And so it might just sound like in front or behind might sound the same. And when that happens, I think your brain tends to assume the front if things are weird. Because when I put headphones in, which kind of eliminate all that, shape of my skull and shape of my ears thing. Because they're not front or behind me, they're like on the sides, right? Like all of the panning is fake. Then my brain tends to assume everything is coming from in front of me at different angles. It doesn't assume anything's coming from behind me when I'm wearing earphones. So I presume that her voice would sound like it's coming from in front of Takeshi. I guess he'd only assume behind because he couldn't see her, perhaps? But hearing Sora's voice without seeing her shouldn't be too weird to Takeshi. After all, it happened before when they were fixing the pipes in the pipe room. In the room they were fixing the pipes in, where Tsugumi got injured. Anyway. Tsugumi-san probably won't wake up for a while. Yeah, in the remake, Sora just, interrupts him in the hallway. It's don't even, look at her. Which is weird.
まだ麻酔も効いてるはずですし、今はそっとしておくのが一番です。
At least the original, Sora, waited until he'd walk in and look at her. The anesthesia should still be working, so it's best to leave her alone for now. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, Coco's in there.
ところで倉成さん、これからお時間ありますか?
By the way, Takeshi-san is so weird. Do you have some time to spare? Huh, me?
はい。よろしかったら、少しお話ししたいなと思いまして。
Yes, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to you for a bit. Talk to me? What could it be about? Did you find a possible route to pass through?
それは現在、あらゆる状況や条件を踏まえ割り出し中です。
I'm currently evaluating all situations and conditions to determine that. So, what is it?
それはですね。
Yeah, Takeshi's saying have you figured out a route is kind of defining someone only by their work. It reminds me of you're trying to start a conversation with somebody, but you don't really know what to talk about, so you default to asking what they do for a living. And it starts to get on your nerves after a while. And so if I were to try to talk to somebody, which I generally don't, I try to think of something else to ask them besides, what do you do? Because I sort of don't like to be asked that. Well, you see...
内緒です。
It's a secret. Sora had a mischievous smile on her face. A secret conversation with Sora? It feels a bit unexpected, except that this is a romance game, but whatever.
ここだとなんですから、場所を変えませんか?
So, why don't we go somewhere else? Now, I'm gonna do go because I'm doing the Sora route here, right? I'm trying to do what I did the first time. Yeah, where are we going?
闇鬼。
The very first time, by the way. So, Sora's voice line is Yamioni, which is kick the can, right? But then the English is well, so I don't know what's going on there.
闇鬼をやった場所、魚の牧場なんてどうですか?
How about the fish farm where we played flashlight tag, which would be Yamioni? Why did you translate that to well? That's not what she said. I guess you can complain about the translation that way. Got it, let's go then. That's why I wish that Takeshi... I would have hoped that Takeshi would have been voice acted back in 2002. They really got to re-record the voice things for the remake, but they did it in the same way that the original had it, where the protagonists were not voice acted. Tsugumi still hadn't woken up, as you had mentioned. Maybe I'll visit her later. I follow behind Sora and head toward the fish farm. Fish farm. We arrive. Colorful fish swim around in the silence.
静かですね。
It is quiet, is it not? Sora murmurs softly.
平常のにぎわいがまるで全部嘘だったように思います。
It's usually such a bustling place, but now it's so quiet.
あ、申し訳ありません。不謹慎でしたね。
Ah, that was insensitive of me. Actually, it was kind of romantic. I don't know what culture she said. No, I can imagine it being filled with excited people. Totally get what you mean. Come to think of it, Sora, how long have you been working here?
私が実用レベルで稼働したのは2011年の4月です。
I became operational at a practical level in April 2011.
それ以来ということになりますね。
When this game came out, I don't know, maybe. Xbox, I've been operational since, Anyway, so ever since then, it's 2017 now, so 6 years, 6 years, huh? Something I noticed is, when Ever17 came out, 2019 would have been in the future. When the original version of Ever17 came out, 2017 would have been in the future. In 2011, when the remake came out, 2017 would still be the future by 6 years. In the commercial translation of Never7, they cut out the year and the date. So everything occurred on, I don't know forgot which month, but some month, the first 7 days of some month in 2019. They decided to just give you the month of the day and not the year. I don't know if they changed Japanese base text or whether they just decided to not carry the year over when they made the translation. And I suspected that might be because, well, it's supposed to be in the future, but now in 2025, 2019 is no longer in the future, and so it wouldn't be futuristic anymore. But you can't really, it's hard to remove the dates from Ever17 and still make sense, so this left them in. So just leave them in to Ever7 too. Gee whiz. I mean, if you, why? Now I just don't know what the relative times are between the games.
ええ、そうですね。
Yes, that's right.
2223日。
2,223 days. That's correct. That is right. Sora squints as if looking into the distance. Her gaze seemed to be fixed not on the present, but the past. I don't know if 2223 is divisible by 17 or not. So 7 times 7 is 63, right? So 17 times 7 would be 133. So you get a last digit of 3. If you subtract 133 from that, I don't know what you get, and then it's just too much work. You have to be so 7 plus some. I better move on before I accidentally start trying to calculate it. Her gaze seemed to be fixed not on the present but the past. Okay. Nostalgia, longing for past times. It seems Sora also has some kinds of feelings. We watched the fish silently drifting for a while.
倉成さん、鬼ごっこしませんか？
Kurinari-san. Want to play tag? Sora speaks up suddenly. Huh?
昨日の闇夜にとっても面白かったんです。
Yesterday's flashlight tag was really fun.
だから私と鬼ごっこしませんか？
So won't you play tag with me? Tag? Weren't we here to talk about something? The question floats in my mind.
さあ、倉成さん、私を。
Well, Takeshi-san, I guess like watashi o yo would just be like, may I, excitedly?
捕まえてみてください。
It's like, I will. Try to catch me. Please. Kudasai is like, please. Sora floats lightly off the ground and starts to move as if sliding around. Hey, wait, Sora. Suddenly, Sora disappears from my view. My eyes wander.
ほら、こっちですよ。
Over here, this way. Where are you? I track the sound to Sora's voice in my earbuds.
ここですってば。
I am over here. I head for where Sora had appeared. Just then, Sora's figure vanishes. Huh?
こっちです。
Over here. I hear a voice from another location. I turn towards the direction of the voice, but Sora's nowhere to be seen.
どこを見ているんですか？
Now, where are you looking? Once again, I turn towards the direction of her voice. There's Sora, a smile on her face. Over there? But the moment I try to go in that direction, I lose sight of her. Huh? Sora appears and disappears instantly all over the place. How can I play tag with her? It's already challenging just to keep up with her visually. Sora, come on, this is impossible, right?
こっちこっち。
Over here, over here.
どうしたんですか？
What's wrong? You have three on the screen now.
私はここですよ。
I'm right here, you know. Her smile dances in the void, dances in the emptiness. Seriously, what's going on? You should understand yourself, Sora. Even if I try to catch you, no matter what I do, I can't grab hold of you.
え、そうなんですか？
Oh, is that so?
そんな。
That couldn't be.
そうでしたか。私知りませんでした。
I see. I didn't know that. The three Soras behave as if they hadn't noticed. Hey, you're multiplying. What's going on, Sora?
あら、どうしちゃったんでしょう。
Oh dear, what is happening? The three Soras tilt their heads.
私、変ですか？
Am I acting strange?
変わりはありませんか？
Is there something different about me? I try to ask this one that. What's going on here? Why are you doing this? Well, there's one on the left.
なんだか自分でもよくわからなくなってきました。
I don't know myself anymore.
とってもふわふわしてて気持ちいいです。
I feel lightheaded. It's wonderful. With a dreamy expression, they drift through the air. I feel like I'm suffocating. Sora, are you really okay? Is something wrong with you? Are you tired?
すべて聞こえさすべき方なくなん。
Everything is inevitable. What the hell? Why are you being so cryptic? Are you possessed or something?
なんでしょう。
I wonder. In an instant, there's now only one Sora in front of me.
わかりました。
I understand.
意地悪するのはこれくらいにしておきます。
I'll stop being mean now. Mean?
ええ、
Yes. Sora speaks casually.
今のはちょっとした前工場です。
That was just a little preamble. A preamble?
そろそろ本題に入りますね。
I'll get to the point. And then Sora begins to speak slowly.
倉成さんをはじめ、皆さんが見ている私は、皆さんが共有する空間的には、そこにあるように見えています。
It seems like I exist in the spatial context that everyone in this room shares, including you, Takeshi.
だけど、視覚情報としては、すべて同じではありません。
But visual information isn't all the same.
視点の距離や角度によって、視覚情報は変わってきます。
Visual information changes depending on the distance and angle of the viewpoint.
本来の私は、倉成さんにお見せしたように、空間に広く行き渡って、偏在することもできるのです。
The original me, as I showed you, can spread out widely in space and beyond my present.
私を見ている人の数だけ、視覚情報としての私は存在しています。
The number of people watching me
世界も
determines...
またそうなのです。
The number of people watching... Sorry, Sora, for interrupting you. The number of people watching me determines how I exist as visual information. The world itself is also like that. The world... What do you mean the world's also like that?
倉成さん、あの時、もしああだったらと想像したことはありませんか？
Takeshi-san, have you ever imagined what it would have been like if things had gone differently during a certain time in your life? Yeah, a lot.
その想像の世界は、もしかしたら本当にある世界なのかもしれない。
That imagined world might actually exist. Are you saying there might be parallel worlds?
そうとも言えますね。先ほど、倉成さんには私が複数に見えたと思いますが、一人一人の私がパラレルワールドの一つ一つだと思ってください。
I suppose you could say that. Earlier, I believe you saw me as multiple individuals, but please think of each of those as a separate parallel world. That's quite magnificent.
ごめんなさい。飛躍しすぎてしまいましたね。私は偏在できるので、世界が一つしかないということが不思議です。
I'm sorry, I jumped a bit too far. It's strange to me that there's only one world since I can exist in multiple places at once.
ですが、倉成さんたちにとってパラレルワールドはまだ現実感がないことかもしれませんね。
But for all of you, the concept of parallel worlds might still lack a sense of reality. Yeah, the concept of parallel worlds is certainly a bit out there.
これはブレーンワールドという高次元時空の概念なんです。
This is a
世
concept...
界はこの世界だけではないという意味ですよ。
This is a concept of higher dimensional space-time called the brain world. It means that this world in front of us is not the only one.
この高次元時空の概念を使って現実世界と電脳世界2つの世界の橋渡しをするように私は作られました。
I was created to bridge the gap between the real world and cyberspace using this concept of higher dimensional space-time.
私を開発した時のコンセプトはより人間に近く人間らしくです。
When developing me, the goal was to make me more human-like, more akin to humans.
そのため私にはヒューマンエミュレートリミッターという制御プログラムが設定されています。
That's why I have a program called the Human Emulation Limiter that restricts my functionality. Hold on a second. If they wanted to control you, wouldn't they just have not given you that ability in the first place?
そうですね。でも時と場合によって私は人間の能力を超えた力を発揮しなければならないのです。
That's true, but depending on the time and situation, I may need to exert powers beyond human abilities. Like now.
例えば一瞬にして100メートル向こうの通路に現れるとかレミに直接アクセスするとか。
For example, appearing in a corridor 100 meters away in an instant or accessing Limit directly. What are the things you can't do due to the program's restrictions?
倉成さん、今立っているところから一番遠くに見えるものは何ですか？
Takeshi-san, what's the farthest thing you can see from where you're standing right now? Maybe a whale or a manatee?
私もなんですよ。ヒューマンエミュレートリミッターが備わっているから人並み外れた視力は持っていないんです。
Me too. Because I have the human emulation limiter, my vision is just like that of a human. So without it, you could have more powerful vision?
可能です。でも残念ながらそこの制限を解除する権限が今の私にはありません。
It's possible, but unfortunately, I don't have the authority to remove that restriction at the moment. But it's okay for you to create doppelgangers to surprise people?
あれは魚の牧場内のお魚の画像情報を私のデータに差し替えて錯覚させたものなのです。本当は分身したわけではないんですよ。
But that was an illusion created by replacing the image information of the fish in the fish farm with my data. I did not actually create a doppelganger. I feel so deceived.
騙すつもりはなかったのですが、私は倉成さんに分かってほしかったのです。
I didn't mean to deceive you, I just wanted you to understand. I see.
倉成さんのおかげで現実世界と電脳世界にあった境界線ともいえる幕が破れたからです。
Thanks to you, Takeshi-san, or Kuranari-san, the membrane that could be considered the boundary between the real world and the cyber world has been breached. Wait a minute. What do you mean? Makes you think of insane in the membrane. The problem with that song is it's probably really raunchy. I forgot what the lyrics are, but they're probably pretty nasty because Lego just didn't want that parody going around. Sora smiles mischievously for a moment.
レムリア碑文の一文にこんなくだりがあります。
In one line of the Lemurian inscription, it says,
見えるもの、見えないもの、広がりを持つ世界、神羅万象、あらゆるすべては見えない紐でつながっている。
Sorry, Sora, I sneezed over your voice line. In this vast world, all things, visible and invisible, are connected by unseen strings.
それは幾重にも分かれ、途切れても、すべては見えない紐で紡がれていく。
They branch out endlessly, breaking and coming together again, and everything is woven together by these strings.
倉成さん、もっと聞きたいですか？
Konari-san, do you want to hear more? I do. Sure, I want to hear more.
わかりました。後で制御室の端末からレミにアクセスして、レムリア碑文についての情報を私のデータベースに追記しておきますね。
Understood. I'll access the Mu leader from the control room terminal and add information about the Lemurian inscription to my database. Wait, weren't you going to tell me now?
すみません。期待させてしまいましたか？
I'm sorry, did I get your hopes up? No, it's just that I just thought you knew everything, Sora.
私の場合、好奇心学習型の AI なので、自分が気になった情報をデータベースから学び、できることは実践して勉強していくんです。
In my case, as a curiosity-based learning AI, I can see what interests me from the database and do what I can to study up on it. I see. I imagine Sora wearing a sailor uniform, a headband tied around her head, studying earnestly at a desk.
あ、何かおかしかったですか？私。
Did I say something funny? What's Kiroshi? Interesting. Sora seemed flustered. No, I just thought it's interesting how even you study like that.
はあ、面白いですか？
Huh, is that interesting? I mean, it's kind of cute.
かわいいですか？
Cute? Yeah, cute. Accurate translation there.
そんな、勉強がかわいい？
So the Binkyou wa kawaii is studying cute? I noticed that Sora didn't put a deska at the end of that, right? Sora talks usually very formally.
理解不能です。
But you drop the deska, it's kind of informal all of a sudden. I can't quite grasp it. Sora had a mix of embarrassment and confusion on her face. She may not have a use for the word kawaii as I've used it.
そうですか？かわいいですか？
Oh, there's the discuss. Yeah, is that so? Cute question mark. There's not really a you say in there. Despite seeming perplexed, she blushes with happiness. Maybe that's what you'd call cute about her.
レムリア碑文の一文を引用したのはですね、
I quoted from the Lemurian inscription
見
because
えるもの、見えないもの、見えない紐でつながっているっていうところが気に入ったからです。
the part about seen things and unseen things connected by invisible strings, I really liked that.
倉成さんが見つけてくれたから、こちらの世界にいないあやふやな存在だった私を仲間だと認識してくれたから。
Because you found me, you recognize me, a vague existence not present in this world as a companion.
それで私も皆さんとつながっているんだなと感じられました。
That's why I feel connected with everyone too.
こちらの世界、倉成さんのいる世界にも同一の私がいるんだなって感じられました。
In this world, in the world where you are, there's the same me.
それでちょっとだけ境界がなくなって幕が破れた気がしたんです。
So I feel like the boundary disappeared a bit, like the membrane ruptured.
倉成さんも紐かもしれませんね。
Heh, maybe you're a string too, Takeshi-san. Sora looks at me with a gentle smile. I just gaze at her smile. And we learn later that might be a kind of a weird joke. Really? 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 So, if you don't know, tuna sandwiches appear much more sparsely in the remake script than they did in the original. But they do appear sometime. Never in any of me tried to translate the remake script, this script using Google Translate or DeepL or whatever, did anything translate to chicken sandwiches. Did they seriously copy what the Hirameki translation did here? Did they know about it? Well, of course they knew about it. Actually reference it and take the chicken sandwiches from the what? Why are you perpetuating the crime, mages? Oh well, chicken sandwiches it is. Well, I got done reading that scene, and it is actually, now that I understand what Sora was saying, which I haven't been able to do before, and now I finally understand what she was saying, the subject matter is actually surprisingly similar to the subject matter from the analogous conversation for the original game. It's just worded up completely differently. And we don't have, the whole discussion of 4D in there. They saved that for you to do later. I don't think that's because they moved it to the U route. I think it's just because it was in both, right? In the original game, you reprises the speech from Sora in the Sora route. But it doesn't delete it for the game if you delete it from that conversation, because the discussion of 4D appears in the U route as well. And they left that in the U route in this, so all the components are still there. Okay. One more thing about the translation that I forgot to say. When I tried to Google Translate this game, DeepL Translate this game, I think both times I went through it, it seemed like they wrote it so that they changed how. Okay, they get out of the flooded elevator from the original. So Tsugumi busts a hole in the elevator, it floods, it sinks down to the bottom. Once it gets down to Drite stock, one of them opens the hatch. In the original game, it was Takeshi. Takeshi dives down and opens the hatch. It appeared when I tried to read it in Japanese that they changed it so that Tsugumi opens the hatch. But how this translation renders it is that Takeshi opens the hatch. So I'm guessing that what they intended in Japanese was for it to be Takeshi opening the hatch. I just misinterpreted it because of missing pronouns and stuff. And that's just what happened. So that's actually not changed. But also Tsugumi doesn't specifically mention to Takeshi the chemical she's using is acetone, like the original. And that scene is made briefer, and it happens before they fix the generator instead of after, and it is made less cute. And while Takeshi is complaining a lot more about the flooded elevator they did in the original. So it's still kind of not improved. It's still like degraded. But just pointing it out that this translation has Takeshi open the hatch. Which is what I was not expecting. Based on what I got from the machine translators. That's why you don't do this with the machine translator. Except sometimes I have no choice. Because it just takes so long and takes so much effort to learn Japanese I don't have the time for. I'm still messing with it, but don't have that much time. Okay. So to bring up the save menu, it's not L like on Xenia, it's 1. Yeah. Weird controls. Save. Enter. I have to toggle to the next page. I use D, I think. Yeah. Unlike a Xenia where I use 3, I use D. And then arrow keys to go around within the page. E and Q work, but A and D also work, not just E and Q. And then I hit enter to save. Now, then I hit backspace to go back to here, as opposed to the B key on Xenia. And I can exit game. I guess I'll do title menu first. Now, this is an are you sure message, which I presumed it was, even though I couldn't read the Japanese. And there we go. So, just to review, I already said what my plans are, but I'll come back and see you again when I get to the Sora ending, and then I'll read the Sora ending.